Hello, in this presentation I'm going to show you some different ideas for using Pear Deck with students accessing the adapted curriculum, so some of our students with those more low incidence disabilities. So Pear Deck is a Google Slides add-on that allows you to make your slides more interactive for students. It's been used a lot during distance learning. It's also used for a lot of blending learning activities in the classroom. And it's a great tool that you can look at, and I'll show you some of the different features as we go through it today. So right now I am actually in a Pear Deck, and I'm viewing this in student mode, so student-paced mode. So this is what our students would see if they were logged into this Pear Deck on their own personal device, on their laptop, on a phone or an iPad, anywhere where they can access the web, they can access their Pear Deck presentations. You'll see in the student presentation, I've got this neat little button at the bottom, and this actually enables immersive reader. If the teacher has turned on immersive reader, then their students can access that feature and use it to read text aloud in the presentation. So first, getting started with Pear Deck. And in this slide, I've actually included audio for my students. So if I click on this little headphone button at the bottom,
Getting started with Pear Deck.
It will read the text that I've recorded. Any of the slides that say audio included, the teacher has gone ahead and recorded that audio ahead of time. Immersive Reader uses more of a computer-generated voice. It's one of the Microsoft accessibility tools. So if you don't already have Pear Deck on your computer, you can install it by going into Google Slides and opening a slide deck, going to Add-ons at the top of your screen, then clicking on Get Add-ons. You'll then get a sort of G Suite marketplace place that you can search for different add-ons and apps. And so you can type in Pear Deck and then look for this happy little smiling pear guy. Click on it and then click on the blue install button, and that will install the add-on to your Google Slides. Once you've installed the add-on, to open it, you'll go back to add-ons, go down to Pear Deck, and then open Pear Deck add-on. Once you've done that, you'll get a little toolbar on the side of your Google Slides that will allow you to add some of those different interactive question types that we're about to go through. So I'll show you a couple different examples of some of the different response types. And again, right now we're in a student-paced mode, so I can control the pace of it as if I were a student. And we're just going to sort of see what this looks like from the student end before we look at it on the teacher side. So the first kind of question type we're going to look at is draggable responses. This is great for a lot of our students who are more visual learners. It's also nice if your students are using some sort of touch device like an iPad or a touchscreen laptop or a touchscreen monitor. They can actually touch on the screen to drag their icon, or if you're only using one icon, they can touch a spot and their icon will go to the spot that they touch. So for this one, we've got an audio included, so we can listen to our audio.
Which picture is a dog?
And then as a student, if I were to touch on the screen over here by the cat, the star would move to the cat. If I were to touch or click my mouse on the dog, the star would move to the dog. If I were on an iPad, I could also hold on to this and drag it. I can also use my mouse to click and drag that response. If I don't want to use that audio included, I could also use this immersive reader tool at the bottom. Immersive reader will read any text that I've typed onto the screen. So if I click down here, it will now show me the text on the screen and I can click play.
Which one is a dog?
I can also adjust some of these things so I can make it higher contrast. If I have a student who is blind or low vision, I can make the text size bigger. If I have a student who requires that, I can change my font. I can also sort of highlight different parts of speech with this feature. I can use my line focus, which will highlight. So if I had a longer passage, I could highlight different things within that passage. I can look at my picture dictionary. So if I click on the word dog, it gives me that visual and I can listen to that individual word.
Dog.
And I can have it translate as well. So there's a lot of really great features that are built into that immersive reader tool. Then once I've read what I need to read, I can go back to my presentation. And I do that using this back arrow here. So now I'm back in my presentation and I'm going to go on to another slide. So looking at another way to use this draggable button, if I have a student working on colors, we could practice sorting our different draggables into different color boxes and kind of focus on that skill. You can have up to 5 different icons that you can drag around the screen. Another way you could use this is if you're working on geography. I know a lot of our students who are in the VAP or participating in the VAP assessment have different things for their portfolio they need to work on. So you might have to find your state. So if we're looking for Virginia, we drag our big old dot to Virginia, and now that student's shown that they know where it is on the map without having to type, without having to do a lot of things that might be more difficult. It is also really nice in a distance learning environment that my student can do this at home and show their understanding of the concept without having to be in a classroom and me physically holding a map in front of them. Similar thing where you would drag the star down to the capital of Virginia. In addition to some of the dots and stars and hearts and different shapes, you can also put numbers into your Pear Deck. So if I was working on fractions with a student and the student wasn't able to type their response, I could have different number choices here and have them use their number draggables to answer that question. Just another example of the numbers. We can drag it, and then we've got our response. Another thing a student might want to be working on is maybe you're working on punctuation marks. So you could have your different draggable buttons be different punctuation marks. So I could have my student drag the period for the sentence that needs a period. They could drag their question mark to show that that's a question. They might drag an exclamation point. And so it's a nice way of sort of assessing their understanding and seeing what they know, making it a little more interactive and also making it accessible for students who might not be able to write all of these symbols on their own, but would be able to drag them over using either their finger or a mouse. So the next sort of response that we're going to look at is a website response. You can use the website responses to link out to picture sorts and other websites to support some of your visual learners. So let's go ahead and look at one of those. So this is a Google drawing, and I've put the link to this Google drawing into my Pear Deck. So now as a class, my students can all work together, dragging the different icons. Maybe they make some mistakes, and you have to make sure in your Google drawing that you order things correctly. So that one sun I had not ordered, so it went behind the box. You can always change that by right-clicking and ordering and moving to front. If you do something like this in your Pear Deck, your students will all have access to the same Google drawing. If you want to send individual copies of a drawing, you would have to do different Pear Decks with different links for each student, or you could just put the link to the Google drawing in the chat. But if you're making an individual activity for a student and you want them to have access to a shared Google drawing, you can do it this way. You can also use this with Padlet. So if you have students who are able to access a Padlet, you can put the link to it in your website response, and then you could have different questions that the students could respond to. The nice thing with Padlet is it offers a lot of different response formats. So I can use this plus sign to add a response. And then for my response, I have all sorts of different options where I can add links, I can add pictures, I can upload different files from my computer. So students have had a document or a presentation they're working on, they can do it that way. You can do quick photos. So maybe a student's using manipulatives at home and they want to snap a quick picture. You could do it that way and just have them add that photo in. You can do voice recordings. So if a student can verbally respond or use their AAC device to respond, they can use that sort of response method, or they could draw their answer. So it just gives students a lot of different ways to answer, and it's a nice way to kind of differentiate. If you have some students who are great with writing and others who do better with voice, this way they each have their own response method. So Padlet's a nice sort of tool that you can embed within your Pear Deck. You can also link out to a Google Forms quiz. So here I just made a really simple animals quiz with picture responses. And my students would all log in separately with their own Google account and then each be able to complete this quiz on their own while we're all together in the shared Pear Deck. So they're not having to go out to a lot of different places. Their links are all embedded right there for them. And hopefully that prevents them getting confused with too many tabs open. I know even teachers sometimes have a hard time keeping track of all their tabs. So it's just a way to simplify it and make it a little bit easier for your students to get to everything that they need. So another sort of response method that we can look at is written responses. So Pear Deck allows you to add in text boxes for your students to respond by using the written response method. So this one, we ask a student to write a sentence about who this person is and why they're important. There are a number of different ways the student can do this. So we can type our response using the keyboard. We could also use the Windows dictation tool. So if I hit the Windows key and the letter H, I'll get this little box that pops up, and it'll take a second when I first turn it on. But once it starts listening, now I can type with my voice into my Pear Deck. And you'll see with any voice to text software, sometimes you have mistakes, so I might have to go back in and edit this. Pear Deck. So you may get some weird spellings, but it does make it easier for students who can respond verbally to get their thoughts down in text as well. So if you have some students typing and others who are not able to do that, who are able to talk about their answer or use their AAC device, they could use the Windows key and H and enable Windows dictation to use voice typing within their Pear Deck. You can also offer choices. So in this one where I did a written response, I just put a little word bank into this. So wind is a, and now I can actually copy one of these. So I have my sort of model to spell from. I could also use, if I've got some sort of other accessibility tool like read and write, I could use the voice typing or the word prediction here. And so I can kind of copy from here. I want to say renewable.
Renewable. Renewable.
So then I can go ahead and use my word prediction and make sure I've spelled it correctly and make sure that I've picked my right word choice. So it's nice. Pear Deck works with a lot of the other accessibility tools that your students may be using. I'm going to go ahead and turn off word prediction now. Another way that students can respond in Pear Deck is the drawing response method. So if I'm looking at the drawing response, there's a lot of different ways to do it. You can have a picture and have students circle their answer. So if we're doing our planets and we want the student to find Earth, they can use pick whatever color they like and go in and circle on that drawing which one is Earth. It makes it a little bit easier for students who, again, might not have that verbal response, or they might not be able to type something in, but they can identify it. It's just giving them a different way to answer. So I know a lot of times identifying orders of planets and things like that can be in our VAP goals. That's just a sort of simple way to do it. Another thing you could do on drawing these are some pictures from Boardmaker, and I actually just took a screenshot of one of the Boardmaker matching activities. So you could have your students, if they're able, draw lines and match that way. So it's yet another way that they can show their understanding with those sort of visual supports. You could have them go into the map and color in. So you could go in and color in a county. You know, you could color in water or different regions of a state. If you're doing something, I know there's regions of Virginia as one of the Virginia VAP goals. So you could have a map where they color the Piedmont region blue or color the coastal plain blue. So you have those different options just to give students that visual support, make it fun and interactive, and allow them to show what they understand in a sort of different way than they might otherwise be able to. It's also great if you have students with more fine motor goals and working with OT and some of that. So if you've got a touch screen, you can have the kids practice with their finger, drawing along the lines. You could also practice your mouse skills this way as well, tracing some of these. So it's just another way to practice some of those same skills with a student in a different way. If you're looking for sort of a fun break activity, you may have, you've been doing a lot of work and the student needs sort of a brain break for a second. You could put in a fun coloring picture. So we made this near St. Patrick's Day and the students colored in the hat. And it was just sort of a way to get away from those academics for a second, take a step back, take a sort of brain break, and then be ready to come back into the next thing. So you can sort of add little brain breaks in as well. You can also use the drawing tool for editing sentences. So just as we added punctuation with our draggables, we could also go in and either use our text feature and make little text boxes like this. So I could I'm going to change my font color actually. So I'm going to make this and make it a capital I. So if I make my capital I, and I can put it right there to change the sentence. I could also type a period, and then I could move it to wherever it needs to go. You could also draw, so maybe it's just finding the mistake. So I'm going to take my little pencil drawing tool and I'm going to circle this I because it is not correct. Or I might do my little, I'll undo for a second here. I might do my little like capitalization things here. Making my little capitalization marks there. So it gives you different options. Again, if you're not in the classroom to have paper pencil, or if your students are more engaged in an electronic device versus a piece of paper in front of them, it's sort of a neat different way of doing things. Another response method that they have in Pear Deck is number responses. So this just lets you type or use these up and down arrows to answer a question. So for all of our teachers, how many hours have you spent making virtual lessons? So we can keep going up. We can use our little toggles on the side to get it to go up, or we can type in as well our nice big number of how many hours have you spent on virtual learning this year. Pear Deck also allows you to do multiple choice responses. So in our multiple choice responses, we've got our questions here, and we can pick different responses. It's nice too because it highlights whichever choice you selected, and that's sort of a nice check as well to make sure that you're really picking the one that you wanted to. And just to show you with this tool, Immersive Reader will work on the question, but it will not work on these responses. So if you have a student who needs a screen reader, you may want to look into either using our natural reader and highlighting.
Pear Deck looks cool, but I don't know if I will use it.
Or if you've got a student who has ATS support and is using Read and Write, you could also highlight and use your play button here.
Pear Deck looks cool, but I don't know if I will use it. I can't wait to.
So some of those accessibility tools that your kids may already be familiar with will work with Pear Deck. Not, again, Immersive Reader is great for text that you've entered, but it will not read the questions or the student responses and some of those written responses. So your student may need to use another tool with it. Thankfully, most of our tools do work with Pear Deck. So some different ideas for using AT. I showed you a little bit of what the Immersive Reader tool looks like. Pear Deck has a great, they have all sorts of professional development resources, and they've got this blog where they will sort of walk you through different features as they're added and tell you about different things. So this is their blog entry for Immersive Reader. If you Google search Immersive Reader Pear Deck, you will find this, and it'll sort of show you what it looks like. I already showed you kind of that bit of it and some of the benefits of using Immersive Reader. And then it also gives you directions for how to enable it. So if you go into your Pear Deck, into My Account, and then you go into your settings, you can actually toggle this on and off. As a teacher, once you've turned it on, it will then show up for all of your students. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm in this Pear Deck as a student, and because my teacher turned on Immersive Reader, I can see it. If my teacher hasn't turned it on, I will not see that button. I will also not see that button unless there's text on the screen that I can actually read with it. So if you're using screenshots of text, that Immersive Reader will not work with it. It only works if you've typed in or copied and pasted actual text. It doesn't have OCR technology to sort of screenshot read what you've got in there. So if you have time, Pear Deck also has a great YouTube channel. So I highly recommend checking that out, and they've got a little tutorial on how to use Immersive Reader there as well. As I sort of showed on some of our different response methods before, using some of those inclusive tools within Pear Deck is pretty easy. So if you want to use that Microsoft speech recognition, we'd hit our Windows key and H. And now, as soon as it starts listening, I can type with my voice. How cool is that? So I can use my other tools. I can use my Windows dictation. I can also go in to my read and write. Now I can type with my voice. Oops, so that got a little mixed up because of where my cursor was. You want to make sure you have a clear area to type. I can type with my voice using read and write. So for read and write, you'll notice it took a little while to type everything I said, and then it put it all in at once. With our read and write toolbar, you just want to make sure when you're ready to type, you've turned it on and you get that little purple bar below talk and type, like that. And then when you're finished, you want to turn it off so that it stops listening. As I showed you guys before, the word prediction in read and write will work in Pear Deck as well. If you have students who are using Co-Writer 7, which is an installed program, or Microsoft 10 predictive text, those tools will also work. So in my Windows typing settings, I just turned on the show predictions as I type, or so show suggestions as I type, which is the Windows word prediction. So now if I start to type, I get these options at the top. And that's built into all of our Windows 10 computers. So if you have a student who is not using read and write or co-writer or anything like that, but they can use those little suggestions, it's a setting that you can turn on that's built in and available for all students. So just to give you an idea of some of the different tools that we have and whether or not they work in Pear Deck, the Windows 10 dictation, which is that Windows key H shortcut, will work in drawing slides if you're in a text box, but not just drawing anywhere. It will also work in the text slides. The read and write word prediction doesn't seem to work in the text tool in a drawing slide, but it does work in text slides. The read and write talk and type works both in drawing slides, text boxes, and in text slides. And the read and write word prediction that's installed on your computer, so you've got a Chrome extension or a Windows installed version, that also works in drawing slides and in text slides, but only in the text boxes within drawing slides. So you'll notice in the drawing slides, nothing works unless you're in a text box, and most things work other than that read and write extension for word prediction. Most of our other tools work within a text box in a drawing slide, and all of them work in text slides. So if you have students who require word prediction or voice typing, those are sort of some of the tools that will work with Pear Deck. So some other neat tools within Pear Deck is the teacher dashboard. And so now I've been showing you guys as a student what it looks like. So now I'm going to go up here and show you as a teacher what it looks like. So my students are in their Pear Deck. They've been going through and answering questions. And now I am in what we call the teacher dashboard. Within my teacher dashboard, I can see all of the slides in my presentation. If I were in instructor paste mode and I clicked on a slide, it would change all of my student screens to this slide. Because the student is in student paste mode, it won't do that. But in instructor mode, you can actually change which slide students are on. In this teacher dashboard, you can also stop student paste mode, so you can sort of take back over control of the presentation as your students are working on it, and lock them onto certain slides. And you can also view student responses. So if I go in, I can see Caitlin Radek put this answer in, and I can favorite responses that students have said. So if I have a really good example that I want to project up to the class, I can look in my responses and star it. And then if I want to show my class responses, I can show my kiddos just the starred responses, which is pretty cool. I can also, in the teacher dashboard, view my class roster so I can see how many of my students are logged in. When students first log in, it asks them for their mood, so I can also kind of see, are my students in a good mood today or a bad mood? I can see Caitlin has her smiley face here, so she's in a good mood. I can also see I'm the instructor, so if I have multiple instructors, I can view them here. Pear Deck recently added a feature that allows you to have co-teachers. So if I'm in my teacher dashboard, I can click on my invite co-teacher button, and then I can either send this link to my co-teacher, or I can invite them. Let's close this out. I can also do it this way if I go to invite co-teacher and copy the link there. And the link is good. You'll see it expires in 1 week. And so this is really nice if you're in Blackboard Collaborate. You can send a private message just to your moderators so that your instructional assistants or any related service folks can get in and see your student responses in live time as well. The one thing you do have to be aware of with multiple teachers, if you're in instructor paste mode and one teacher clicks on this slide, it will change it to that slide for all of your students. So kind of be aware of that. A few other things in our teacher dashboard, we can turn on and off our student paste. You can open projector. So if you are in class, if you're doing concurrent learning, or if we're back full-time in classrooms, you can have a projector view, which is what you might show on your smartboard or your projector at the front of the classroom. And then you could have your teacher dashboard open either on a second screen or on a second device, where you can actually see the student progress without showing it to the whole class. So in our teacher dashboard, just a couple other things. So if I look at, let's go to one of our text responses here. So if I go to this text response, I can see my student responded. This is just where I was sort of voice typing. I can actually provide feedback to my students. So I can see their response and I can tell them, great job. Oops, great job. And send that feedback. So now if I go back to my student view and we go, I can see I've got this blue box saying that I have new feedback. And if I click on it, I can see on slide 20, this is what my teacher said. And then I can mark as read so my teacher knows I got their feedback. I can go to the slide and make any changes that I might want to make. So it's a really nice way of offering that feedback in real time. This is also handy if you have multiple teachers in your teacher dashboard. So maybe your IA is running your slideshow and you're providing feedback, or you're presenting the slides and you have an IA providing feedback, or your students do this in student-paced mode for homework or on an asynchronous day, and you can go in individually and give students feedback on their individual responses in a pretty quick manner. So I can either add more feedback or leave that. If it's a really great response, I can star it. I can also hide the response. So if my student's written something inappropriate and I want to show all the responses, I may want to hide theirs if they've used some not nice words or it's something that's not appropriate for the whole class to see. So you'll see there's different views you can do as well when you're looking at some of these responses. You can view them as a list. You can view them in a grid. So if I had multiple student responses, this would appear more in a grid. And you can sort them either by student, by response, or by time. So one more other thing to show, when I told you guys before about open projector view in new tab, if you click on that, you'd get a version that you could project on the screen. The neat thing about this projector view is as my students respond, I can use this show responses button and it will show me all of my student answers. The really cool thing with this is it doesn't show on the projector who said what or who responded which way. So as I show my responses, the kids looking at this being projected don't know if there's an incorrect answer up there. They don't know who said it. So they can respond without that sort of fear of being wrong and having people look at them funny or whatever. It offers that real-time feedback that you can provide as an instructor, but also with that sort of privacy where students feel okay to take risks because no one knows that they made a mistake. So going back to our teacher dashboard, once our students have all responded, we've looked through everything, we've given them feedback, we can go ahead and end our session. So if I click end, I have two different options. So because this is in student-paced mode, I can choose to end it and whatever's done at that point is done, or I can leave it and allow students to keep working. So if I have students who may take a little longer, or maybe they're doing this on their asynchronous Monday and might need a bit more time, I can leave it open for them to continue working. I want to end this session because all of my students have responded, so I'm going to say yes, I'm sure. And now it gives me an option to save this. So I can do, we'll call this one Pear Deck Video Sample. So once I've got my name of my slideshow, I can name it. And then I also have published student takeaways. So each student who participated in this lesson will get a copy of the Pear Deck with all of their responses and spots for notes. So they can have everything you presented, they can see what their answers are, they can see your feedback for their answers, and they can make notes on it. There's a spot there if they want to print it out and write on it to make more notes so they can use it as a study guide later on. Or for some of our low incidence kids, maybe their parents want to practice some different skills with them, and it's a way for their parents to get that data and sort of see what they've done. So I'm going to save and end my session. And now it's going to take a minute and it loads this takeaways. So now I've got a link that I can put in my Google Classroom, or I can put in the chat, and the students can click on that link and actually see their responses like we were just talking about. So when I go to look at the responses, it automatically gives me that link that I shared with students. And if I click on it, for each student, it will open in their own Google Drive. Because I was the instructor and a student, it sent me both my responses as a student and the blank responses. So if I wanted to share this out with a student who wasn't there or print it out as a page to take notes on, I could do that. If I had more students in my session, I would also see all of my other student responses. So if you're tracking data for a VAP binder and you want easy access to those student responses, it'll actually save it in a Google document for you, and you can download it as a PDF. You can also do it for tracking data if a student is, let's say we're looking at color sorting and we had that one slide in there that was color sorting. I could go in and now I have quick access to what my student did, answering those questions in real time, and use that for sort of my IEP goal data as well. So just to kind of show you what it looks like, if I click on my responses, it gives me what the name of the Pear Deck was. There's a space to summarize that you can type into. And then you get your responses. So it goes through each slide in the Pear Deck that we went through together, and it will show the slide, and then it will show, for ones that have interactive questions, it will show your response. So this one, I can see that the student answered correctly. I can see how they did with matching colors. If the student didn't respond, it will just stay blank. We keep going here. And you can see it also publishes links to the different activities that we did. So if you wanted to go back and look at the Padlet or look at that Google Slides presentation, you could click on these links, or go back and do the quiz again. You've got the link there. It will also show our answers here. And go through all of our different responses. So it's a really easy way to collect data, and for students to have this to go back on. They know what they learned that day, and they can go back and review it and work on some of those skills again. And this, again, as a teacher, you get a copy, and then each student gets their own individual copy with their own responses in it as well. So as you move forward with using Pear Deck and trying out some of these different tools, Pear Deck has a lot of great ready-made resources. If you look at their YouTube channel, a couple of the videos to kind of get you started, how Pear Deck works and present a Pear Deck, are both really helpful. But you can kind of go through their different playlists and see what's available there. The Pear Deck website also has a lot of help videos as well as a how-to handbook. So as you kind of explore and get to know the tool a little bit better, those are some great resources if you have questions or are looking for different ways to practice. Thanks so much for joining us for this video today. If you have questions and you're an FCPS employee, just contact your AT resource teacher or your school SFITs, and they should be able to help you through navigating this program. Thanks so much.